This is one of my studies I did. It's a book, and it's a study to youth culture. I did it about 18 years ago, and I will tell you something about that. And the next study I'm still doing is, I started it 5 years ago. It's what happened to. I started to revisit all my own projects because well, everybody was started to talk about sustainability, and we all architects, we said, well, we are building sustainable already. What's it all? Yeah, what you're talking about. So I thought I start to visit all my projects. I couldn't do that because there were 50, and I started to revisit 25 of these projects. So first, I tell you something short about my first study, and then I revisited much more, of course, but then I revisit that little part of my research. So some 18 years ago, I saw in the papers children were getting thicker. You see very old-fashioned computers here, and children sitting more inside. And I saw cameras on the street, even in Amsterdam and in other parts of the city. And I thought it would be good to integrate these kind of ideas or phenomena from these paper cuttings into architecture and urban planning. So that's what I started to do, a kind of empiric research. So I started to look at what cities are lively. I visited loads of cities. I made photographs, and I started to search for cities which are really lively and altogether safe and healthy. What makes these cities that they function that way? I started in Amsterdam, and what you see is that the Amsterdamse stoep is an intermediate zone between the building and the pavement. It's one of the most beautiful zones in cities, and it gives a lot of interaction between inside and outside, and people, well, having a glass of wine on the street, and ice on the street, and a lot of social safety. Here, for example, in New York, you see the quality of a huge pavement. It's not shopped, I have to tell you, because it was somewhere in Brooklyn. It really is like that. So a huge pavement, you see children moving outside, they're not sitting inside, and very interesting. And for example, in Ethiopia, you see here there's just a tree, and there is a kind of mountain from steps under this tree, and people sit here and see each other, talk to each other, and it's a kind of nice surrounding. So all these kind of ideas, this social space, started to play a role in our own work. Like this project in Borneo-Sporenburg, where people happily started to make these sand holes in a kind of anarchistic way in the pavement. I like that very much. I made huge doors, huge high doors, which you could open, and inside and outside is it's very un-Dutch. It's more or less the same. So you see this kind of the street is very lively. The other side of the street is less. And I try to design all kinds of hotspots everywhere. This is a pavilion, a kind of children's pavilion. So I try to make that veranda feeling, a connection between inside and outside. So a little bit of a roof, a veranda above your head, and the facade is ending on the floor in a bench. So people sitting there, and they're just not sitting just inside. This is another project in Groningen. These are two gymnasia, two sport halls on top of each other. And, they have indirect light inside, and, at night it's the other way around. So it's a kind of light element. And this brickwork wave, it starts with a bench on the floor, two little squares, a bench, And these school children, they sit there during the day, they wait for each other there, and this project really anchors in its surroundings, and that's what I'm trying all the time. So all the time, how is this project anchored in its surroundings? So this is a bigger project. It's in an urban plan from OMA in Utrecht, the Uithof, and 400 students, 1,500 windows. I try to get rid of the kind of DDR gallery flat. So I thought, well, these colors, they mask the windows, and they do. But then how does this complex is anchored in its surroundings? So I made this huge cantilever, and I put a huge bench. This is a little bit what happened too, because this bench used to go up and down about 15 meters high, and it was it was almost 2 days later, it was connected to the ground, so it couldn't do that anymore. So these kind of things I found out. But I made a place where students can wait for the bus, meet each other, and well, people are, well, they are connected to outdoor life. This is a former factory in Nijmegen where I made a kind of patchwork-like collective space. And people could use it the way they wanted to. They could just put stones away, put a tree, have an animal there, and they did. So they're using it in different ways. And it also means that it's used very intensively, and it gives the whole neighborhood an impulse, and it makes one of these lively spots by which you create these lively networks. And that's what I want. Create lively networks with lively spots and a good living environment. A double mosque with a square. We designed a square in front, and this is the Intense Stad. It's curated by Winnie Maas. Yes, the Intense Stad, it says, well, I wanted to make a little square between this old building and the new building, so I made a little square with some benches where, well, people could sit and interact with each other and the surroundings. Made huge inner courts where people could live, and green areas, big galleries like this one where children can play, and that's this project. So, Utrecht. Also a project with a green inner court, wide galleries, a turbulent pattern of galleries, places where you can sit everywhere. And all these buildings, they anchor by benches and details in its surrounding. So playful space, like this recreational project in Eiburg, Amsterdam. So we designed this project, and it's water related. Children can swim, skate. Buildings as a playing element. These ceramic patterns of this mental children's hospital are used as playing space in the meantime. I didn't design it that way, but it's used that way. And I also, this is by the way a school in Vlissingen, and I designed all kinds of slides along the staircases, and a rope bridge through the void, and so it really starts to be a moving building, and children start to see that moving is nice and not just sitting playing Pac-Man, what is nice as well, but in another way. So up-climbable buildings, the first one was in 2000, this is a later one, the Matrix, and you can climb up these buildings and sports stacked on each other, and up there is a huge sports field. We have very little space in the Netherlands, and 2 football fields are on top. So a patchwork of spaces, different spaces for children, and you can climb up the whole building. So these aspects of livability, this is an energy neutral school, and we wanted to make a very compact building, but we thought just compact is just compact. So we made a huge hall, and it's a kind of balcony with trees and school gardens, and so not just sun panels, but 2 halls in the building where you have a half climate, and children can, it was not in the program, but children can sit there. We made some picnic tables, and there are school gardens, and they can have outdoor lessons, which is in fact more healthy than staying inside all the time. And ecologic facade, so bird houses in all the different facades, different bird houses for different, west, south, east, north. And then, so what happened to this project? 5 years ago or 6 years, I started to drive along all my projects. It was a hell of a job, but it started to be better and better. I really liked it. I talked to all kinds of people, stakeholders, clients, but also, of course, to users, inhabitants. And I learned a lot about projects I didn't see for a long time. So it was very difficult, so now and then, because I saw things which I never have, which I never thought of. Well, this is just a funny detail, but people try to change this building in all ways. And here there was someone who said, yes, my building is a bit hot. And I thought it's probably quite handy when I have this thing and I put it somewhere to the letter box. Well, all kinds of these things. But I concentrate on my themes, which I just showed you, like social space and for example, transparency. So this is what I wanted to make all the time, and this is what happened. So I made all kinds of these spaces, a kind of veranda feeling, and I made all kinds of places in front of these houses. And then I thought I did tring. So what's happening here? Why don't you use it? And things like that. So I saw it everywhere in the Netherlands. People can't cope with these programs which are full of transparency. In every program we get as architects, I think the word transparency is there about 50 times. And we need it because light, healthy, etc. But one of these projects, there were just other cultures, and they said, well, my children shouldn't play on the street, they should stay inside. When they play on the street, they get bad influences. And they get the curtains shut. So what you see is that my ideals, I'm a bit naive, so now and then. So I have these ideals, and I try to make that. And now I find out when my ideals work and when they don't work. That's what I'm working on at the moment. Sometimes it's a bit difficult after 30 years in this profession that you see that things don't work at all. So schools, this is the Intense Stad in Groningen. I thought this is what happens. Well, we have the theme in my sort of research, better safe than sorry. So, of course, I made all these slides, and then you can see it. People try to make a little piece of material because children were really falling downstairs, they thought, and I think nothing happens, but they thought they would. So, in the end, all the slides were covered with plants and other things. There are three schools. One of them is still using it, by the way. And this rope bridge, it says now, and all the parents got a letter, that you can just go on it at your own risk. So parents have to sign that their children can walk there. it's the most safe bridge ever. No one can ever fall out or whatever. So yeah, another project. This is the first photo of one of my projects in Vijfhuizen, a housing project, and everybody started to make find out their own ideas, and they started where I ended, and it's wonderful. It's not getting more beautiful, but it's getting better and more interesting, and that's the. I come to the point from my latest slide. It's probably not the strongest that survive or the most intelligent one. It's the one that's most adaptable to change.